Hello teachers, it's Chris here to provide you with a little bit of information around the last week of our mathematical thinking unit at Manual, as well as the last week of school before a much deserved week away and time off to be with family. First, I just want to say thank you for your commitment to this unit. It is not comfortable, it is not easy, it's not something that comes naturally to many of us, but like always, you guys dove in with professionalism and a desire to learn and get better in your craft, and so I want to say thank you for that. If I didn't have a chance to say thank you before we took off for our trip to Asia. This screencast would give you some information around what Teachers College will look like the last week before Thanksgiving, as well as moving forward into December and perhaps even into the new year. Just a review, last week we studied what mathematical thinking may look like when infused in your current lesson plans, knowing that this isn't a wholesale shift in your instruction. This is the infusion of mathematical thinking practices, mathematical vocabulary into the work that you're already doing in a way that can be replicated and repeated to help support the student's development of mathematical thinking skills. So last week you lesson planned around the vocabulary and mathematical thinking practices, and so thank you for that work, and I should have provided feedback to a lot of work for those of you who submitted. And now, as we move forward using that work, the big goal is to see what students created. So this week, here's kind of our big outcomes. One is teacher teams will work collaboratively to plan lessons that infuse mathematical thinking into their lessons. So you might have done that last week, you might continue that work this week, but really taking time to infuse mathematical thinking in the work you're already doing. You will, really the big priority this week is to utilize the Manual Student Work Protocol to look at student data and to determine areas of growth, areas for improvement, what students created and how we can continue to plan for and around mathematical thinking to extend their learning outside of the math classroom. And so the student work protocol is the big objective for the week, making sure that you take time to look at what students created and plan from that information. And you'll also take your time to work collaboratively, to co-plan, to talk about any lingering needs or what may come after break with your teacher teams. And so make sure that you guys spend that time on your last day. Spend your time on the last day as a team, both looking at student work or planning for December as we move into that time of year. Really, the days look like this. I'm going back to last week, so November 6, 7. Here's your objectives. If you guys worked independently and collaboratively to plan around mathematical thinking, I had you guys reference the CLO anchor chart. The standards of mathematical thinking are on the windows in the Teachers College room, as well as some vocabulary that you guys can use to inform your thinking. And had you do some work and submit lesson plans or the work you did in ancillary response to your lesson plans around mathematical thinking. So thank you for that. This week, the 12th through the 16th or 12th through the 15th, which will be the last day of Teachers College, the big goal is to analyze student work, like I said before. You will use the student work analysis protocol that will be led by your teacher leader. The protocol can also be found on the tables in the Teacher College room, on the table tents. They are the pink pieces of paper that walk you through the protocol. I'll also have that on the next slide. And so you'll look at student work and you'll plan around the outcomes that they showed and make next steps. In that column, I put the term, are you willing, or the question, are you willing? And that's the question I asked us at the beginning of this unit, knowing that mathematical thinking is uncomfortable for us, for many of us, not all. And so the question is, are you willing to continue to learn and get better and refine your craft around that specific part of your instructional practice? I also put that on the day for student work analysis of, are you willing to provide the feedback necessary to help students move forward and help teachers plan for students? And so feedback so often is difficult, but it also is how we get better. And so I ask, are you willing to provide the feedback necessary? On the last day of Teachers College next week, I'm really giving that to teacher teams. You might leave the data discussion, say, let's continue to plan around mathematical thinking for after the break. And it also might be a great time for you as a team to plan, how do you want to end the semester well? And so I put teacher teams as a lead there, and grade level TLs can also use their time to facilitate and lead that meeting. You guys can co-plan, you guys can plan for your lessons, but make sure you use the tools that are in our Schoology page, the Common Core Standards, the curriculum scope and sequence if you're using district curriculum, and the lesson planning template that we used last week. And take that time as a team, take that time to plan, and I really mean take that time to do as much as possible so that you can go into break feeling good about your return and having as little work to do as possible, knowing that you guys all deserve the rest. So the big outcome is on day one of Teachers College next week when you look at student work. The protocol, like I said, is on the tables in the Teachers College room. I'll also have copies, but it's here. The way the protocol is best set up is in the smaller groups of 3 to 4. And so I don't need to read each of these out for you. They'll be in the Teachers College room, but really that feedback section is important, as well as really looking closely at work. You'll see that step 3, examining student work, is the biggest chunk of time, because sometimes we look at student work and say, oh, yep, good, great, let's keep it moving. When if you really take time to look at the CLO from the lesson, its alignment to what kids created, you can really find gaps or ways to move to refine and align that practice. And so take time to look at student work, but that protocol will be available for you, and make sure you're using that to really push instruction forward and to provide feedback for your colleagues. And lastly, on day 2 of next week, if you guys decide to continue to plan or as you move into break, just some questions to guide our thinking around all the learning we did around mathematical thinking practices in our room. So thinking about how can I repeat this process? If we just infuse mathematical thinking once, we know that it won't move the needle for our kids. And so think about what structures can be put in place to replicate mathematical thinking and mathematical support in your classroom. As much as possible, how can we align our language as a grade level team to mathematical thinking? How can we use the words precision, explicit, implicit, critique of reasoning in our grade level teams so students are hearing that from class to class and it makes sense for them? What does student work show us about how to better support our students as mathematicians? The best and most refined way of educating is taking student work and planning from there. And so look at that student work and plan next steps that is responsive to the work that students created. And then I'm really going to leave the question, with this question is, how can I use each minute in class to build and extend? Last week I offered a tool around how to use do nows and mini lessons to fill gaps in order to, for the rest of the lesson, push kids forward. Not lingering in gaps and not lingering in places where they don't know, but supporting them methodically and intentionally and repeatedly each day in mini lesson form. And so go back to that tool and how can I use each minute of class to build in order to extend for the rest of a class period. Again, thank you guys so much. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving and a much deserved break. And this will be sent out with a few more pieces of information for you guys to use as you look at student work and plan moving forward. Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Thanks so much.